Today on Toy Habits, we are featuring a review of the G.I. Joe Classified series Cobra Island Cobra Viper, one of the most iconic army builders in G.I. Joe history. And speaking of history, we'll take you back to 1986, where the magic began. Hey everyone, welcome back to Toy Habits, and today we are reviewing the G.I. Joe Classified series Cobra Island Viper by looking at each body part up close, his weapons and accessories, and we'll be comparing him to his vintage self from 1986, so let's get this army building party started. Alright, let's first take a look at the front of the box, and the Cobra Viper comes in the G.I. Joe Classified series window display, which shows off all of his amazing accessories that he comes with. And let's take a closer look at the art on the front of the box. We have the Cobra Viper with his goggles and his face shield. And I love what they did with the wraparound helmet that they put on him here. And you can see his scarf. And I really love the animation here. And it's given like a really gritty look to it. And there is a color scheme that is running through the side of the box, which is kind of bleeding into the front. And on the side of the box, we see 3 Cobra Vipers in varying poses. And I love the way that their face shields are drawn. And if we zoom in here, you can kind of see that they're a little bit reflective. They might be reflecting their surroundings. I want to say that this might be Firefly up on his mask because it looks like a gray soldier with red eyes, and that just screams Firefly to me. Maybe they're on a covert mission with the saboteur himself. Now, one thing I wanted to point out, there's a very interesting color scheme running through the box, and when I looked at the side of the box, I definitely got Alley Viper vibes with the blue and the orange coloring that is running through this particular side of the box and bleeds into the front. So I don't know if anybody else had that feeling, but I sure did. And let's take a look at what the Cobra Viper is known for. He is a level 1 foot soldier, a level 2 at wielding light weaponry, level 1 in hand-to-hand combat, and a level 1 night environment specialist, which surprised me because I always thought that these Cobra Vipers fought in the daytime. And finally, taking a look at the back of the box, we can see more of Cobra Island. They've zeroed in on some of the installations here, and I can't figure out if this is a missile installation or a factory or an oil refinery. My old eyes cannot see and distinguish that detail, so if anybody knows, let me know in the comments below. And as we zero in on the top of the box, we can see this elaborate runway system with an airplane hangar, and I love that these are bridges, because how else can you build an installation like this on an island that has rough and rugged terrain? And let's first take a look at the head sculpt, and apologies in advance because the paint that they used is really glossy and it's picking up some of the equipment that I have staring right at it. And I'm just going to bring in the 1986 Cobra Viper so you can kind of see the difference in paint app here. The Cobra Viper from 86 used more of a matte finish, so it's not super reflective. But that said, let's first take a look at the helmet, and I love the updated helmet design. I love that they've angled the helmet into the face shield, that it just makes it look more interesting. They do have some vertical lines and some sculpting, then they've added some red detail here just to give that helmet some extra depth and dimension. And a cool feature that they've added to this helmet is the removable goggles, and I actually really like the goggles on. If you take them off, it just looks kind of plain, and it just doesn't make the Viper look as classic or as interesting. But with the goggles off, you can see a lot of the helmet sculpting detail here. They did put some lines that kind of cut pretty deep into the top of the helmet, which gives it a lot of definition, and it makes it look like this is a helmet that's used for combat. And I'm going to put these goggles back on his head because I do like the way that they look. They just slip on like so. They're a little bit of a tight fit, which is nice because once you have them on, they don't come off very easily. And if you turn the Viper around to the back, I do find the back of his helmet just a little bit boring. I wish they did some technology detail here instead of just making this a gray piece that's integrated into the helmet. But I think all in all, I do really love the head sculpt and I love the new helmet design, and I think it just makes the Viper look a lot more updated while still retaining that classic feel from 1986 that we absolutely fell in love with. All right, let's focus on his upper torso now, and I'm really torn about liking or not liking this scarf that these vipers have. So I'm going to take this off. It is removable, so we can just kind of see what the detail is and look at the figure without the scarf. And I think it looks good with and without it. And I love that you can kind of see his neck detail here. They gave him some muscles in the neck, which I think is a very cool feature because they're just providing a lot of details that you really can't see. And obviously without the scarf, he does retain his classic look, and I think I'm digging the look without the scarf. What do you think? And let's zero in on the vest here, and I think they did a great job alternating the reds and the blacks here. I love that the straps are red, and it just makes the vest look super interesting, super detailed, and it gives it some added dimension where if we just had a black vest, it would look super boring. And I love that they used the alternating colors here and really added some nice red accents in the appropriate places. And I do like all of the pouches that are hanging off the vest. This is a soldier, and he is supposed to be carrying a bunch of gear into battle. And I love that they've put all these pouches on and around his vest. And if we turn the figure around, you can see the back of the vest, and we do have some red stitching detail running through. We do have some cool sculpting on the armor, and obviously these red straps give the back of the figure a lot more interesting look. And I don't know if this was intentional or not, but they made the vest really form-fitting, and I think it just fits the figure very well. I'm going to bring Firefly in here in a moment just so you can see the difference between a super chunky vest and a form-fitting vest like they gave the Viper here. Now, as you can see with Firefly's armor, they've basically cut the armor straight down instead of making it form-fitting, which makes Firefly look like he's a lot bigger than he actually is. And I love the way that they've tapered this vest on the Cobra Viper just to make him look a little bit slimmer and a little bit more form-fitting to give him an extra cut look. Couple other things that I would like to mention about this vest before we move on is the Cobra symbol on his right here. I think the Cobra symbol is a little bit small for my taste. I would like to have it just a little bit bigger so it fills out the section a little bit more. And I do like the addition of that Cobra symbol down there. It just gives it some added detail, and you know that Cobra loves to brand everything that they own. And I know that I said that was the last thing, but one other thing that I wanted to point out is the smoke grenades on his vest here. And the smoke grenades are just attached to the vest, but they are super detailed. You can kind of see the molding that they have here. It's kind of cut in, and it gives the smoke grenades a very cool look. And you can definitely tell that they put a lot of attention to detail in this vest here. And let's take a closer look at his arms, and his forearm guards are very reminiscent of the 86 figure. And again, they're using texture here to differentiate some of the parts in the forearm armor. And I really like the detail that they have in here. And I love the way that they use black, which plays off the red in the forearm guard. And that's pretty much all that's left to talk about in the arm detail, because the upper arm is just the standard blue issue uniform that most of the Cobra soldiers wear. And his arm on the other side is pretty much exactly the same. They did add some wrinkle detail here, so you can imagine that he is wearing this in real life. And I do love the way that these arms are sculpted because they just look that more realistic. And let's take a look at the pants and the boots. And I love that the way that they've used red on the inside of the pant leg here just to differentiate and just add some color to these pants, because they could look a little boring without it. They did add some red detail up here, as well as they added some sculpted pouches that are on each of the legs. And he does come with a removable holster that has a gun, which I'll show you in a bit. But again, they have strap detail here, and it looks like there's netting, and I love that the way that these holsters are designed, as they just look really cool on the side of the leg. And finally, let's take a look at the knee pads and boots. And these knee pads go along with the boots, and these boots are actually the most boring boots that I've seen in the line so far. They're pretty much a straight black with some scallopy detail that they have running down the middle. And I actually do like the fact that the knee pads are designed to go along with the boot detail. So that's one of my favorite aspects if I had to find something to point out that was positive about these boots. One thing that I did want to point out, which I don't think I've noticed before in any other of these reviews, but I don't like the seam that's running down the middle of the behind here, as I think this should just be one solid piece without a seam, and it just makes it look very busy, also with the pockets going on in the figure in the hindquarters here. Now the Cobra Viper comes with a lot of accessories, so let's first start off with looking at the scarf. Now this is the same scarf that comes with Zartan. This version is gray, and again, I'm pretty hot and cold on the scarf, but I do like the sculpting detail here, and it looks like it's actually a physical piece of clothing. Next, let's take a look at the goggles, and these goggles are pretty cool. I do like the shape of the goggles, and I do like the fact that they put a bridge on there for the nose, and even though they really don't go over his eyes, I think they just look really cool as part of the helmet. All right, next let's take a look at this small gun, and this is the same gun that is packed with the Baroness, and so it's a pretty uninteresting gun. It's probably one of the less detailed guns that I've seen, but I like the overall shape of it, and I love the fact that it's got a longer front on it than a normal pistol, and I like that it has some ridges on the top here and a little sight. So it's not gold, but it is black, and it goes with the style of the figure. And let's take a look at the larger gun, and this gun is very reminiscent of the 1986 version that the Cobra Viper came with, especially with the handle coming down here. It's not as large as the one that came with the figure that was packed in 86, but we'll do a comparison on that later. I do love the sculpting detail here, and I think they've done an amazing job with just the look and feel of updating this weapon for a more modern style. I do love the scope. That's my favorite part on this gun. And last but not least, let's take a look at the backpack. And I love the way that this backpack is sculpted. I love the pouches on the side and the pouch on the back. I love the smoke grenades that they have here. And of course, it has to have a red Cobra symbol right in the middle of it. Now, the color of the backpack is a little bit lighter than the soldier's clothing, which I think is fine. And I do like the rope attached to it. It just gives this backpack a really cool look. And I love the greenish gray color that they used here just to differentiate the rope from the actual backpack. And here is the Viper all geared up, and he just looks amazing with all of his weapons. And I do like to put his larger gun in his left hand, which gives him a free hand if he needs to pop his hand down and take out that gun that's in his holster. I did pop his scarf back on just to show you what he looks like, and his goggles just complete the amazing look of this figure. And let's turn them around so you can also see the backpack and how that sits on the back. And I think they just did an excellent job with all of the details on this figure. And it just looks simply amazing. And I love that this is an army builder, but it's so hard to get a handle on these figures to army build with them. And I wish that they did not make this a Hasbro Target exclusive. Now, I do actually have two of these Vipers, and what I thought of doing is using this scarf designation for a squad commander and then leaving the troops without a scarf just to designate the hierarchy of command here. And one of my favorite parts of these reviews is getting to compare these updated figures with their vintage figure counterparts. So let's start off by looking at the head sculpts. Now, the head sculpts between these two figures are very similar. I love that they gave the updated classified figure removable goggles, although I do love to put them on and I don't like the look of them without them. In the vintage figure, the goggles were sculpted on, and I alluded to this before, but the face paint app here is made of more of a shinier metallic silver versus more of a matte silver on the vintage figure, which catches less reflection. And finally, if we turn these figures around, hopefully they don't fall over, you can see that the vintage figure has some detail and some sculpting in here, which I wish that they did back here in the classified figure, because I think the classified head sculpt back here just looks too boring. And while these figures are turned around, let's compare the backpacks. The backpacks look visually different. They are very different shapes and they have very different things on them. So for example, there are smoke grenades on the back of the classified figure backpack where there are regular grenades on the vintage figure backpack. And I do love that they added the Cobra symbol, as if you can tell right here, there is a tiny Cobra symbol right in the middle of the backpack. So they did retain that in the classified figure. And next, let's take a look at the guns. And I alluded to this before, but the updated classified gun has a very striking similarity to the vintage figure gun. And although they are different colors and slightly different shapes, they do retain a similar look and feel, which I am very happy that they included in the classified figure. And let's take a look at the vest detail. And the addition of the smoke grenades is a little different than the original grenades that were on the vintage figure, but I think that's fine. I think that's a great update, and I alluded to this earlier, but I wish the Cobra symbol on the classified figure was as large as the vintage figure, as I think it just looks more substantial and it just makes the vest look a lot more cooler. And the last thing that I'm going to point out is just the overall presentation of these figures in their classic blue uniform with all of the red accents that they have, and they're all in the right places just to pay homage to the original figure from 1986. This figure looks absolutely stunning, and it's so well crafted, and I wish this figure was more available to the masses so that everyone can enjoy him. The Cobra Viper is one of the best figures in the G.I. Joe Classified series line thus far, and it just goes to show you that if you keep true to the vintage styling of the figures from the 80s, you can produce a stellar figure that's also timeless. We hope you enjoyed this review of the Cobra Viper, and please let us know by hitting that thumbs up button and smashing that subscribe button. And that's an order, soldier.